Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Metal Talk. I am your host, Karen Edwards, and today's topic is going to be really, really important and interesting, I think. And I am sitting here, well, sort of virtually, with Chad Rowe from Metal Forming. And Chad, welcome.
Hi there. How are you this afternoon?
Good, good. And today's topic for this metal talk, if I can get my slide to move, I'll show you, is going to be all about enhancing safety in sheet metal bending. And I tell you, the folks at Metal Forming and Chad in particular are experts in the field. And before I jump into the topic and introduce Chad, I do want to mention that this is being recorded. So if you want to share this after the fact, it'll be available online within 1 to 2 days typically. On our metalcoffeeshop.com. And I do have the chat open. So if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in there. We have some time at the end where we'll go back through your questions. Or if you just want to say hi and tell us where you're from, feel free to do that too. We'll keep an eye on the chat as we go. Alrighty, let's get started. Chad, would you please introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a little bit about your background and what you do?
Well, I certainly hope that you have some newcomers because some people might be getting tired of hearing me talk a little bit, but that's okay. It's not going to stop me from talking. So I've been with metal forming for since 1999. I started as a service technician, and I've done a little bit of anything and everything. So my years and experience in the industry um, in today's world is getting fewer and far between. People typically don't stay in one place this long. I'm stubborn that way, I suppose. Um, but my current role and position is a director of business development. What does that mean? We're all in sales. Metal forming is always looking for that next innovative product or that next solution that customers have been asking for. It's also building relationships and maybe crossing over into some industries that our equipment hasn't been thought of in the past. So there's a
Yeah.
lot that goes on, a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad you're here today. We love having you as a guest, and we don't get tired of you because you bring such great knowledge and information to these conversations. So
Thank
I
you.
want to, to go to this next slide, and we're going to start with talking about manufacturing. And I think that and some injury statistics. Before we dive into this one, I want to talk about a contractor who, maybe is just getting into metal. Maybe they're thinking about purchasing their own metal bending machine. Once you have that machine and you start bending your own panels, you've now become a manufacturer, and you need to think a little bit differently when it comes to safety. And Chad, can you just get us going here with a little bit about the dangers that come with manufacturing?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when I transition from, I've been purchasing um, product and I've just been installing. There's a whole world of safety requirements when you're actually on a job site that need to be taken care of. But then there's a whole different set of safety. Some of the same things apply, such as housekeeping type things. But as I purchase equipment, as I start using this equipment, I am truly manufacturing my own goods to use. So I am a manufacturer, and that opens up a whole different set of safety requirements and topics. Unfortunately, manufacturing continues to be ranked in the top two of injuries reported by the Labor Bureau and Statistics. I can't
Yeah,
say that word,
there you go.
statistics.
I'm going to share the graphs.
Thank you. And as you can see, those injuries and those reports. This is the current data. I'm sure in the next 2 years or within the next year, new sets of data will be released. But We can see then that the trends are coming down, that these injuries are slowly trending in the downward direction, which is a good positive thing.
Get the next one there.
Yeah, so here we can still see that manufacturing continues in the private sector as well. And these are injury cases that are reported. These are
Right.
injury cases that are reported. Unfortunately, not all injury cases are reported. So we can use, we'll take a little look into some of the technology and devices that are in play today as to why those numbers are able to start coming back down. So going right into a little bit of the mechanical and the machinery history. The early adoption of equipment and machinery used in manufacturing were all manually operated, mechanically operated devices, and those had inherent dangers. The technology didn't exist for safety protocols or safety devices. Once then the equipment and the technology advanced and started using some electric and hydraulic equipment, there began to be some improvements as far as safety goes. But again, those devices were still a little bit limited. And now today, with today's technology and safety standards, when we're talking about these CNC controlled machines and even some of the fully automated systems, the safety standards in 2025 are much different than they were in 1825 or even 1925. The safety equipment that is available today is much different than it was even just 10, 15 years ago.
It is, and technology just continues to make things safer. With anything, with the manufacturing machinery, with vehicles, with, a lot of stuff. So I think that's great that we're seeing these numbers go down because of some of these new technologies, but we still have things happen. So we still need to think about safety.
So, in thinking about safety, why is this such an important? Well, one, there can be a large financial burden uh, when an injury does happen or when an accident does happen, and our people, our employees, that's our biggest investment that we're making into a company. Um, so some of the ways that you can help protect your investment, and again, especially if so you're somebody who has been on a job site, there are on the job site safety briefings that happen every single day. There's no reason that those same principles don't apply. They do still apply even inside a facility in a manufacturing environment. And again, I think it is a great point, Karen, that you brought up, even on Monday when we were talking about this, that you may only have one machine in a shop. That's still a manufacturing environment. So safety meetings, training, what kind of training? Well, there's lots of, there's training about how to use the equipment, and then there's training about how to use the equipment properly, keeping your work area clean. And then as we're going to explore today, what types of safeguarding exist to protect the equipment and your largest investment, people.
For people. Yeah, that's for sure. It's always being aware and especially when you mention training, if you hire a new person, how they're not going to know all of that intuitively right off the start. So it's really important to spend that time and that energy in making sure everybody's safe. Because at the end of the day, that's, no accidents. We want everyone to go home.
Well, and I can only imagine today's times when it is difficult to get people.
Yeah.
Somebody's first day or two on the job, and if they see an environment that they don't feel safe in, it doesn't present itself well for welcoming them back to work the next day. So
Excellent.
all of it becomes important, keeping retention of people.
For sure. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that should be taken into consideration in the manufacturing environment.
So there's some really basic, simple things that that people can take a look at. One, your general housekeeping items. Is the floors, your workspace area free of trip hazards? These are all, your basic things. Distance. So if we talk about distance, how far away from a certain piece of equipment should people be? And that differs for different types of equipment. What is the response time to that safeguarding equipment? Does the machine stop immediately? Or does it take it some time to respond before it actually stops the complete motion? Just as an example, a saw. Well, a saw blade, typically you can turn all the power off on it, but it may continue to turn until that blade runs out of energy. There's mechanical guarding, there's electrical guarding. We're going to look at some specifics then about, what is a mechanical guard? It could be a post that's provided in an area so that a forklift doesn't get too close to a piece of equipment. So some of these items that we're talking about safeguarding don't have to be some new innovation.
Right, right. So metal forming and Chad, with your knowledge and your experience, you guys really help contractors who are bringing in new equipment, setting up a shop. Is safety one of the things that you review during that decision-making process of what they're going to buy?
It is a topic that we do discuss. It is a topic that we must discuss. And it differs, that conversation then differs based on what is that equipment that we're talking about. And there's some equipment that is inherently more safe than others. And we'll explore into that, but a fully automated system provides a much different level of safety that I think a lot of times people don't think about when they're looking at this big picture of, okay, well, I've been in business for X number of years and I've had this piece of equipment, this piece of equipment. Now I'm ready to look at, okay, what's beyond. I think safety is a big factor when looking at some of these higher end systems that maybe gets overlooked at times.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
we're just looking for the productivity and throughput when there's some other factors that can be
Part of the
used
decision.
as part of
Yeah.
that decision making process. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So now when it comes to safety, who makes the rules? Right?
Yeah, so the ANSI B11, this is the safety standards. These are all the protocols. This is the document that is the overarching guidelines for everything in the workplace. A lot of people sometimes believe that, well, it's OSHA that I have to watch out for. OSHA doesn't actually make the rules. They are a rule enforcer. So the OSHA is actually using the ANSI B11 safety standards as their guidelines. So if hopefully everybody's familiar with OSHA, occupational safety health awareness, I do believe, or association is what that's
Administration.
the
Yeah.
administration. Yeah, Google,
Yeah.
Google is always a good helper in
Your
that area,
friend.
but nobody wants to hear the word OSHA in your shop.
Mm-mm.
So again, these are this NCP 11 is available online. It is not free. It must be purchased, but it does. What's a small investment uh, when it comes to safety and again protecting your biggest investment.
Exactly. OSHA with a violation of safety standards usually comes a pretty hefty fine. That in and of itself is not good, but ultimately it's your people that you are keeping safe by following these safety standards. So definitely look into it. I have a link that we can drop in the chat if you're interested in checking out this guide. I'm just going to copy it right here and let's move on to talk about some of these specific safety features.
Sure. So in the bending machines, we'll talk just a little bit about bending machines, and also this type of protection can be used in many other applications. There has been, and I'm going to go forward a little bit, and then I'm going to come backwards a little bit.
Okay.
Over the period of time of, again, this last 10 to 15 years, I've mentioned that the safety items and the technology in these safety devices has really changed. And 10, 15 years ago, there were some safety devices that were available that were not effective because they didn't allow the piece of equipment to still be able to perform its intended function. So what does that mean? That means that if a bending machine is supposed to bend, this system then should protect the bending machine, should protect personnel, but I still need to be able to use that machine to bend metal. So light curtains or even a 3-point laser safety system that are available today are able to provide a protection that allows the system to stop if these lights, the light curtain or this laser safety system are interrupted. And then it could be interrupted for any reason. It could be a person, it could be a tool, or it could just be the metal that you're trying to bend. In the case that it is that metal that you're trying to bend, these safety devices will allow the system to continue operating, but at a regulated speed. That regulated speed, which comes from the ANSI B11 standards, is a movement or a motion at 10 millimeters a second. For all of us Americans who use imperial, that's roughly 3/8 of an inch per second. So the systems today are able to protect the equipment and protect the machinery and still allow that machine or that operation to continue and allow that machine to still be productive. And that's a big change. That's a big change. Previously, the systems would just stop and you were not allowed to then move forward. So the system then, a lot of people chose not to use safeguarding because it shut their machine down.
Right.
And how do you do your job? Can't, or
Okay.
you couldn't.
If there's anybody on here who doesn't know what a light curtain is, that was me like a couple weeks ago. I Googled it, but maybe Chad, you can just explain.
Yeah, sure. So a light curtain is simply, let's see, how do we paint a verbal picture here? Um, they are is placed in a series of lights that is placed in an array. This device can be typically placed in a vertical fashion, could be horizontal, could be at an angle. They can be small devices, 2-3 inches, up to a 6-foot tall device. And a light curtain is sending a signal to a receiver or to a reflector. Maybe that's an easier way to describe it. And then we have attached to this light system a little brain. And if this light in any of this areas gets interrupted, then the system will stop because it's no longer making that transition from the sender to the receiver, whatever that receiver is. So then this little brain or this controller says, hey, you have to stop working. You must stop your movement. Then that controller, that brain of this system can be programmed to allow certain functions to continue. And then these lights, in the example where maybe this light curtain is 5 or 6 feet tall, I can define in a certain range, if the light curtain is interrupted in this certain range, then I can allow that system to keep operating at this controlled safe speed. If it's interrupted outside of that area, then maybe I choose to, stop all the motion and I don't allow that to continue. Hopefully that
Very
paints a
customizable.
little very customizable, can be
Yeah.
used in a lot of different applications in a lot of different ways. There are many different types of light curtain is kind of a generic term that is common in the industry. A light curtain can sometimes be a single point laser.
Hmm.
Typically, that's not a light curtain, but some people might use that terminology. There's a couple of brands that are really deep into safety, and that's all they do. SICK or SICK, that is a common brand, a common name, and their purpose in life is to provide safety for equipment. There's another brand called Fiesler. They have a little bit different offerings. They offer a system that is used by several different vending machine manufacturers, and that utilizes a 3-point laser system so that I get different functions by using these 3 points. So again, much like that description, even with the light curtain, if one of these points is broken, then maybe a certain function is limited or is stopped. If all three are blocked or communication is, then no operation can continue. So again, all of these systems now are available in smaller packages. So maybe previously where a system physically just was too big, it wouldn't fit
Hmm.
into an area that I needed it. That technology has advanced so that we can get those safety devices into areas where previously we couldn't, as well as then the technology behind them having the brain power and the technology then to be programmed to function how I would like for it to function and keep my people safe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the way technology advances so quickly in every day, just because you couldn't have something a few years ago, check into it again because it's quite possibly that you will be able to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about our parents saw washing machines coming into their life and how it changed their lives. And now I can control, I don't do it. Trust me, I don't do this, but I have the ability to control my washing machine through my phone. Um,
Right. Yeah, it's kind of
it's just,
crazy.
it is, it is absolutely.
Okay.
I don't want to talk to my washing machine.
No. Yeah, just clean my clothes for me. So
Yeah.
here's some little collage of pictures of some of the sensors that we were talking about.
Yeah, and those devices. So in that upper left area, that's a type of a laser scanner, and that brand, Fiesler. Some different zoned light curtains is in the upper right. Uh, Shielding or guarding that can be part of the mechanical guarding. And within where these systems are placed, all is relative to, we had mentioned that distance factor earlier, how a
Yes.
piece of equipment reacts, how quickly can it stop. All of these factors go into the right system, and when should I use and where should it be placed.
Yeah. Lots of things to take into consideration, but a lot of these companies too that provide these solutions, I'm sure provide assistance too, and making sure you are getting what you need, and that you're setting it up the right way.
Absolutely. Any of the suppliers that we work with that offer integrated safes into their equipment, uh, they are relying on safety and industry safety experts to take into these distance factors, the time factor, what's the response time of the piece of equipment from the time that that light curtain is broken to how many milliseconds does it take for the system to stop. So all of the, like I said, the integrated systems that come from the suppliers that Metal Forming operates with, they're industry safety people.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, let's talk about some of the mechanical
Yeah,
safeguards.
absolutely. How do you keep people safe? Well, one of the ways is to essentially prevent them from getting into areas that may be dangerous. So there are some different ways in the picture here shown. We have some safety fencing, and these particular types of fences are electrically interlocked so that if I open a door or if I open a gate, that will stop the machine from it will prevent that machine from being allowed to continue to operate. In some cases, we don't have such sophisticated devices. We use just a bolted fence type scenario where I do not have access to any of the hardware from the outside area. So I can't take apart the fence to allow myself to get inside. So there's a lot of different ways, but the mechanical safeguard is a very safe and very popular way. Just keep people out of areas that they shouldn't be in.
Right.
People will find a way in. Why they do that, I don't know, but they will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. So with this mechanical locking system, the sub bullet there, it talks about an approved safety system. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, there are any, I can't just go to a Home Depot or your favorite electrical supply house and pick up a piece of a fence or build a fence that would typically be considered a safety approved system. Even a strictly mechanical guard, uh, being this mechanically fastened fencing, must come from an approved safety system supplier. And these people are meeting this ANSI B11 and these standards, and these items may or may not be approved by OSHA, but they've definitely been approved uh, by an overarching authority that gives it a approved safety rating. These
Okay.
systems then, here's the downside. Here's why people don't go that route. You know what? I'm just going to go and make me a couple posts and I'm going to put some sort of guarding up. It's because a truly certified safety system costs more money.
Yeah.
It costs more money. But again, what's the price? What's the price for protecting our investment?
Right. Safety is not a DIY project
No,
by any
typically
means.
should, yeah, no. There's there's no person that has started a do-it-yourself project and said, let me consider all the safety factors first. Okay,
Right?
no chance.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
jump in there and get it done.
Yeah, make the investment.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, everybody's safer. You're going to be more productive. Your people are going to be safer. Don't try to do it yourself. Okay.
absolutely.
Now, you mentioned earlier when we were going through the history of the
Hmm.
different types of manufacturing, from manual to mechanical, and the best for last is fully automated. Let's talk a little bit about what this means
Yeah,
and what it looks like.
yeah. So typically a fully automated system is will have likely multiple levels of protection. In certain areas, it may just be a mechanical. It may be safety fencing that you can't climb into or get access to the system. In other areas where I do need access, I may have that same safety fencing, but I use an electrically interlocked gate or an access door to allow myself in. In some cases, it may be an area that is protected by a light curtain, where a fence or even a gate or a door may not be practical. In an application that people from the roofers coffee shop or metal coffee shop in this architectural industry may be familiar with is if I have an automated coil system and I need to load in or remove a coil, a safety fence with a gate may not be the most practical solution. I might need a light curtain, then that gives me more room and flexibility to be able to enter that area to exchange these coils. When that light curtain is turned off, then the complete system, depending on how it's controlled, may need to stop its complete operation. But I have that flexibility of these different systems. A key point, in my opinion, when I'm looking at these fully automated systems, is what is that right protection for me and my business? There are some cases when I may have multiple moving parts in one automated system. What happens when one of those functions stops working? Does it shut the complete system down? Or am I able to block curtains? Or maybe it's a safety zone that allows me to be able to come in and still use the other two functions of that system so that I'm not completely blocked from production. How does that system work best for your needs? There's a lot to consider beyond, okay, what's the purpose of this automated system? And then how does it work? And why is the safety system an important factor in consideration for this system?
Wow, that's a lot to think about and to figure out. So I know that
I
yeah, that you guys help a lot, right?
you took a pause. Was that a lot of it? There was a lot of things there.
There was, yeah, that is a lot to think about. What am I using the machine for? What am I producing? What if something is triggered? You had my head spinning there for a little bit when I was thinking about all of that. So how do you help contractors figure that out?
So we ask a lot of questions. Real honestly, it's we ask a lot of questions and then we enter a dialogue with that customer. And every customer has different levels of understanding of how of these systems and what safety is. So it all begins with just communication. Okay, what is your intended purpose? What is it that you're trying to accomplish with this system? What does it need to do? How do we protect it? What is the environment that that piece of equipment may be placed in? Because sometimes the environment may not be a friendly environment for such an automated system. And then, okay, what access might you need to get into the system for maintenance, for adjustments, for one function stops working? How can I don't want that one function to prevent me from operating this piece of equipment. So it's conversations, and then through these conversations, then we also educate what types of systems work well in different scenarios.
Yeah, and I know that we visited your booth at IRE and we saw some of what's new and I remember you explaining some safety features that were in one of the machines that was a new feature and
Yeah.
is part of that accomplished through software updating? How does that work?
Yeah, some of it is done through software, some of it is a combination. It's typically a combination of hardware and software. So in certain areas, we may place a pause run button, or maybe we place an emergency stop button in an area that we didn't realize was, hey, this is in the area where the operator is standing, or this is an area where somebody might walk by and we need to provide a safeguard or some sort of safety device in that specific area that maybe even as a manufacturer, our suppliers, as they're evaluating their equipment, customers are always the good test. They're always the
Yeah.
best. They're always the best test.
Yeah. They're the ones that are, using it and giving you feedback as to what their needs are. And that
They're the ones that, yeah, they're the ones that find a way to break things.
that's an interesting way to look at it.
Well, and I don't mean that they try to break things,
Right.
but I want to quantify that just for the viewers. Um, it is they have a job to do,
Hmm.
and they have production demands. They have manufacturing demands. They need to produce X amount of product in a day, and they will do what is necessary to make those to achieve those goals.
Right.
And that's where we find out that, oh, you need to be in this area that we thought you didn't need to be.
Hmm.
So that's what they try to break things. They find they discover they discover things that maybe again as a equipment builder or like our suppliers, they evaluate everything as much as they can. The true test then is comes from our customers. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about some myths that
Mhm.
exist out there about safety and address them because I mean these myths may be keeping people from implementing proper safety measures.
Yeah, so a couple of the key points around here, my output's going to be affected. Machine doesn't move as fast as my old machine did. It's going to stop me from being able to meet my goals, or I can't make a certain profile because the safety system stops me. Those are all true things that used to be in place with older technology. Today's technology does not limit any of the machine's performance factors. Does it, in certain situations, slow the machine down? Yes, but those are requirements that are um, just like speeding through a school zone. There
Oh,
are speed limits in a school zone for a reason. And again, same principle applies. If I'm in a certain area and I need to perform a certain function, the machine speed may be limited, but that's what's required. And I'm still able to use the system as it's designed and be productive So I think there's a lot of older technology, people that have had machines maybe for that 10, 15, even up to 20 years, that they may have investigated some safety options in the past, and there weren't necessarily good safety options for a lot of different types of equipment, where today there are. There really are.
so remember that, the
Yeah.
times they are a change in technology is it can do more. And, we've talked about it being smarter and, only targeting certain areas or doing different things and being able to customize it. So 100%, you need to look into that. And this next slide, we're going to talk about choosing the right system. And we've touched on this throughout because,
Yeah.
as I said, my head was kind of mind boggled
Mhm.
of thinking of all these things. But let's just, kind of, if we can pull it all together for everybody,
Yeah.
how do you know what is right for you and what should you
Yeah.
consider?
You've got as a business owner, they have a lot of things to think about and to consider when purchasing a piece of equipment, when running a business in a day-to-day basis, uh, and choosing the right safety system. What is the right system for me? Uh, those are always difficult decisions. What is that operational impact on the safety system? Maybe I make two less pieces per day, but the environment that my group is working in is a much safer environment, which keeps people happier and keeps them wanting to come back and know that that the company that they work for is invested in their safety. Uh, what is a fully protected system? Is there, in some cases, as we were talking about that fully automated solution, maybe I don't need that fully automated system, but the level of safety that it provides me is the important factor. Maybe there's been some accidents. Maybe I can produce an equal amount or more because I'm not interrupting that system. Then, of course, there's always what is the cost versus what are the benefits. As somebody who's been in the industry for a long time, and I've had the unfortunate experience of sitting through some depositions and being
Mm.
deposed myself in the event of some accidents. There is a limit, right? There is a limit to what a business can absorb as far as what is a cost. But I would suggest that talk with your insurance provider.
Mm.
There may be some actual discounts that you may be able to get from your insurance company because you are adding additional safety measures. So while that cost initially may have some value to it, you may get a reduction in another area that may be very helpful. So there's a lot to consider. There's a lot to consider, but I think probably one of those key things that people don't always think about is, you know, is that may I get a savings in some other area?
Yeah, didn't think about that, like what you're paying for workers' compensation
Yeah,
insurance. If you're reducing
yeah,
those risks to your workers, you could be saving in your monthly premium.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to open it up for questions here in a couple minutes. So if you've got them, fire them up in the chat. But I want to talk. We're talking about choosing a safety system, different types of systems. Can you tell me, like, if I'm talking to Chad, I'm going to buy a metal forming machine to put in my shop. What kind of safety features does it already have? And or is it like options on a car, right? Like I want the heated seat or I want how does that work?
Oh, that's a great question.
Sorry, we didn't talk
No,
about
that's
this ahead
okay.
of
No, no,
time.
no. No, that's fine. This is a very good question. A lot of those things depend on the type of equipment and then the real honestly, the price point or the capabilities. Maybe that price point's not the right one, but the capabilities of a system. So for example, a portable roll former. I have doors that can be open and I could be exposed to rotating equipment. Those doors have safety interlocks so that when I open that door, the system will stop operating or stop turning so that I'm not allowed to be inside that system and be exposed to this rotating operating equipment. All of our powered equipment has minimum of one, if not multiple emergency stop, push buttons, kick bars, methods to stop the machine at any moment. The CNC folders that operate and bend in an up only direction have always for years had something called a safety stop, or some people call it a mute point, where the system is allowed to come down to a certain point at a high rate of speed, but then below that safety stop or that mute point, then that speed is slowed down. I can I can assure you that systems 10 years ago, companies had the ability to go in and make some tweaks, and maybe that safety speed was not where it should be. Uh, Today's systems, then uh, you're not able to go in and adjust those speeds. So you have the assurance that at that safety stop and below, the system is moving at a safe speed. And with the technology behind it, it is a regulated safety speed so that it is the correct safe speed. Do some of the end users like it? If they've had a machine for 20 years and they get this new one of the first calls we always get is this thing is too slow.
Oh
How do I
no.
how do I speed this thing up? Well, and overall, the other operations of the system are actually faster. So
It
that
balances out, right?
yeah, there has been, but visually to the eye, right? Nobody. That's always the running joke when we talk with some of our European suppliers. I always ask, well, what do you need? And my answer is always faster,
Faster.
faster and more. So then, going back, sorry, back to the original question.
Yeah.
Um, uh, when I start getting into some of the machines with a little more capability, such as a double bending machine, there is different levels of protection that are standard on that equipment than with some other options. So, for example, the double folder, double bending machine that metal forming offers has several different layers of standard protection. Um, if an operator is inside a light curtain, he can still be operating the machine, but it's going to move at this safety slower speed. We have the 3-point laser safety system that becomes in place if I'm inside that light curtain. As long as I'm outside of the light curtain, then the system can operate at its full speed and fully automated. So and then there's safety fencing, there's interlocks, there's door interlocks. So a lot of the safety devices and safety standards sorry, that are standard with the machinery is dependent on the capabilities of that system as well.
That makes sense. That, different machines, different functions are going to have different safety features. And I think it's important to note, everybody wants faster, but often if you're moving too fast, that's when an accident is going to happen. That's when something's going to go wrong. So I understand the slowing down in certain situations. But like you said, it gets made up for in other areas as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. All righty. Well, let's open it up to questions. We did have one question asking about if this presentation would be available later. And yes, we will have this online on metalcoffeeshop.com within 24 to 48 hours. So by Friday, it should be out there. If you want to share this, if you're in a shop that maybe you don't feel safe and you want to pass it on to a supervisor, a business owner, I think this would be well worth it. Or if you're wondering, evaluating your own shop, certainly Chad would be happy to, talk with you about your operations and what your needs are and help you figure out a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we spend a lot of time educating ourselves on what is our business. We educate ourselves on how to install a roof, educate ourselves in a lot of areas, and the safety is often a secondary thought as to, oh, well, we didn't think about that. Well, why did you think about it? Because some accident happened, or maybe it was a near miss.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of resources, and again, does this mean that every company needs to go out and hire a safety director, a safety standard person? No, you don't have to have that. But absolutely a knowledgeable, maybe it's all employees should be knowledgeable about safety.
It really should
Maybe,
be
yeah,
all.
it really should be all.
Yeah, because
To
not
what
not even
level that differs.
not even the machine operator, Chad, but maybe somebody in another part of the building that walks through the shop or comes out to talk to somebody. They're not familiar with the equipment, and they may not be even thinking about the dangers and what could happen. And I've seen these machines in action, folding
Yeah.
metal. Yeah, you don't want to be anywhere near that where you're going to be injured.
Yeah, the first deposition I actually sat through 20 some years ago was the person who got injured was not an operator. He was nothing more than a janitor, and his job
Yeah,
that day was to clean the machinery, and an accident happened. So absolutely does not have to be the operator of said piece of equipment. Can be
right.
just be it can be someone just walking through a shop.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, thank you, Chad. This was really, really interesting, really important, as I said in the beginning. Thank you for being here, for sharing your knowledge and all this invaluable information on the safety, making bending safer. I love it.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I have to close with one other keynote
Sure.
for all of my Atlanta Braves fans out there. Don't worry, we're going to be just fine.
If you didn't know, Metal Forming and Chad are located near Atlanta.
Yeah, my love for the Atlanta Braves goes way back to the 80s when they were no good.
Well, there you go. You're not a fair
No,
weathered fan. You
no.
stick it out. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. If you want to learn more about metal forming, they do have a full directory on both Roofers Coffee Shop and Metal Coffee Shop. You can find their contact information there. Tell them you watched this webinar and you're interested in learning more about safety. Thanks for joining us today, and we hope to see you on a future episode of Metal Talk. Be sure to visit metalcoffeeshop.com to catch this one on demand or other episodes that you may have missed. We hope to see you next time. Bye bye, everyone.